Coaches, are you ready to revolutionize your game preparation? For the past 5 seasons, coaches across the nation have been using the ultimate scout team game changer, the Coachpad. Imagine this: no more scrambling on weekends to prep scout cards, no more fumbling with paper and binders. Whether you're drawing your cards digitally with a computer program or sketching them by hand, the Coachpad is your all in one solution. Picture yourself on the practice field effortlessly managing your scout team or standing on the sidelines during game day, syncing adjustments from the press box to your coaches on the sideline and back. With the coach pad, you can clearly see your scout cards even in the brightest sunlight. No more squinting or dealing with the wind blowing clear vinyl sleeves everywhere. This offseason, take your coaching to the next level. Get your coach pad today at thecoachpad.com and gear up for a winning season ahead.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have the head football coach at South River High School out there in Maryland, Coach Steve Erxleben. Coach, how are you doing?
What's up, man? How are you?
Doing good. It was good chit chat with you before we started. Before we kind of get Coach's background, make sure you like, share, subscribe, all that jazz that YouTube tells us to do, so they find videos and all that lovely jazz. Check out our sponsor, Coachpad. But Coach, I mean, before we get started really into the nitty gritty of some defensive stuff, how did you end up as the head coach there at South River?
Well, I mean, I think anybody who's been a head coach before, whether it was a great experience or a bad experience, you're truly, should be honored to be in charge of a lot of people that all have the same interest, and that's becoming better people, growing as individuals. So I'm very blessed to, in my 23 years, almost 24 years of being a head coach for 15 years, which is kind of very very blessed to have had that happen. I've been in kind of the right place at the right time. I've been also been fortunate to be a coordinator all but 2 years of my career. I was a college assistant for 1 year, and then I was a high school linebackers coach only a single year. So outside of those years, I've always been a defensive coordinator. So it's been a lot of fun. I originally I'm from Bowie, Maryland. Originally, I played high school football at Bowie High School, and then I played my college football at Frostburg State in Western Maryland, where I coached for a year. And then I came to South River as a young, very young, extremely young defensive coordinator, and learned a lot over the first couple of years, and continue to learn. And I've had the opportunity to be a head coach at really 3 different institutions. I've been a head coach here twice. This is my second kind of tour, and hopefully it's probably my last. So having a great time. Kids are great. School is great. Coaches are great. You know, and very very honored to be on this podcast.
Now, my first question, and we've talked privately, so before people kind of seem like we kind of just hit on some things real quickly. Like me and him have had a long other Zoom that we talked a lot of good defense. It was a good night.
My
Um,
wife mentioned that was a little too long.
well, I think my wife says that about every Zoom
Yeah,
thing, especially
sure.
especially this time of year when I do a lot more than normal. But I mean, defensively, I mean, you mentioned all but 2 years you coordinated defense in some form or facet. Like, how is that in that 20 something years? How has that evolved for you? How has defense and your approach to schematics, play calling evolved over that years?
I think it came this weird. I think we're having this discussion just a couple minutes ago. I think it's 2 things. One is the nature of what the offense is doing, and two, it's your personnel. It's the kind of kids. We're not going to put a round peg in a square hole. Like we talked about in our first discussion, I played in a 5-2 monster defense in high school for the most part. I was an outside linebacker. I played in a G defense in college. The premise of the 4-2-5 before it was kind of popular. It wasn't really called that then, but it was a 4-4 defense with really some nickel personnel. And I played 2-3 technique, so definitely different. Then as I've kind of evolved over time, I've always even when I was growing up in high school, I always kind of thought I would, if I ever called it defense, I would want to cover the center at least pre-snap because that starts the play. So I've always had an affinity with an odd defense, and when we made a switch from an even kind of mentality to an odd mentality in 2003. We've kind of taken off. Now we're doing things different than we did back then. Back then we were more of a two gap team. Now we're definitely more of a slant and angle team. We defend the run with motion or movement versus having to, we take on blocks, but we're the scheme is part of, are we spilling the ball, we boxing the ball. But definitely what the offense has given you. The one thing I'm noticing is, as goes from the pro level all the way to our level, is the amount of motion you get pre-snap. You're getting more than one. Used to be team goes in flat motion, arc motion. They move the tight end. Okay, that's one motion. You can deal with that. Now it's two, possibly three times. So it's that has changed. It's actually probably had to simplify some things we've done. And the last thing I'll add is, the call used to be long. You used to have like numbers and it makes now everything's a concept, like a cover three concept or a quarters concept or a read two concept. We become more conceptualized. We're reading like the quarterback's reading. We're working against blocking with the blocking scheme. It's not just keys and reads anymore. So we've had to become better because offenses have changed pretty dramatically.
No, I mean, you're 100% right. Like, no, but like with that conceptual and like my biggest question for a lot of people when they go from even front to odd front, is it just personnel or was there certain things you were seeing schematically that you're like, we need to start making some changes because they're taking advantage of whether it be bubbles or
I think it's definitely both, but I also don't think these days you can be we are an odd front, we're an even front. I do really think you've got to be both, and you have to have some level of deception from what you're doing. You got to give and like I think I told us, did we talk about it last time we talked? The offense is going in motion. Why aren't we going in motion? Why aren't we, showing something pre-snap and playing something post-snap, both on the back end and also with the front? So that's part of where we've also changed a little bit is that we're doing more and it used to be, you're an old school defensive player. You're like, oh, we're going to line up, we're going to run it, and we're going to knock them back, and we're going to, I don't know if that goes on all the time anymore. And I think the style of game is becoming a little bit different. Players are longer. They're not as thick, at least at our level. They're longer. You're also getting more out of more multi-sport athletes in the high school level. We just talked about it about lacrosse and basketball guys being great slot receivers and safeties. Um, so I don't know if I answered the question totally, but I think it's everything you said. And like Coach Saban said, he's either adapt or die. And I think we're always looking for ways. I know you're going through kind of a transition. We're going through a bit of a transition too. We were a zone pressure team for the last 5 or 6 years, and now we're thinking more. Are we better as a six-man pressure team? Doing some similar things, not making a wholesale change, but adding and subtracting.
now, I mean, me and you kind of talked about, but for people, again, zone pressure, I know what it is because me and you've talked. Zone pressure, what do you define it? Because there's several people who define zone pressure as different things. Because um, there's the University of Pitt zone pressure, three hot stuff. There's the old Dick LeBeau fire zone pressure system.
Right.
So, what would you define your zone pressure stuff as?
Well, first off, we're not gonna play man, but we're gonna play some match principles. So really, first off, when it comes to coverage, we're gonna have kind of two different kind of points of emphasis. One, are we playing more of a match kind of situation where we are really playing some man principles, but you have a final two, a final three, a final one, and then have some sort of 3-by-1 adjustment, or are we playing with more eyes on the court? Are we really playing more of a true zone where we're still clear, still match carrying deliver, but our eyes are on the quarterback? The one thing I can say is, if somebody goes in motion, we're not going to trail. We're going to bump and stack. We're going to adjust, but we're not going to trail. And also with I think a four-man pressure is zone pressure. Who's the fourth rusher? Are you lining up with four hands in the ground and they're your four rushers, or are one dropping and somebody from the secondary coming? I think that the replace pressures, there's other terms I've heard before, or places like the old Dave Aranda kind of kind of mentality of,
The
and
creepers and the stones and all that stuff. Yeah.
yes, creepers is another one, right? So I think it's gone well away from where Dick LeBeau was in the '90s about being 303 deep, and reading some of his stuff, and the mentality of it was safe pressure. It was sending five, but you're not telling a corner you got to take all of one, or a slot guy all of two. We can trade it off, and I think where zone pressure's gone now is now it's not just a third down mentality, it's a first down mentality. And we discovered that as we got better at it in 2018 and 2019 is, why aren't we doing this every play or some sort of version of it every play? Why is it only considered a third down option? We're getting good at it. You can also use it to defend the run. A lot of our patterns change from first to second to third down based upon the situation. We're better as a third down. I look at it as is it the old school, NCAA pressure where it's kind of late developing. We're better as just bring it on third down. No crossing of people. We're not trying to trick the protection. We're trying to attack the protection. Whereas on first down, there's an opportunity for some gap exchanges and trying to work the blocking scheme against itself.
No, perfect, coach. Like I said, that's kind of why I asked that question, is because
And the other thing I think it does is it reduces the amount of reading. We had the same conversation about, as an odd defense, any defense for that matter. If you're an old school linebackers coach, we're reading guards. And you know what? Guards have usually told the truth. But it takes time. It takes some intuity of the player. And, do we have enough time to teach that? Or is it better we kind of trigger it for them? I think and also, last thing is, it allows us to play with some smaller bodies because we have them. We haven't had an inside linebacker. We've only had one inside linebacker over 205, 210 pounds in like the last 5 or 6 years. We play with guys that are under 200 pounds inside. And, I watched the Naval Academy just up the street, and they get away. Colin Ramos is 5'10", 205, playing against Notre Dame and some other really, really talented players. He's a really good football player. Their scheme helps it out a little bit. So I think I told you we look at our guys in 3 different categories: D linemen, corners, and kind of everybody else.
No, you're right.
We can get the best 11 guys on the field.
And that's why I asked the question, because, like, again, you hear all these terms, sim pressures and creepers, and then you get the fire zone stuff, and then the Narduzzi three hot
203 deep stuff, right? Yeah.
three deep stuff is really hot right now.
Which for him at Michigan State was a third down thing.
Yeah.
We're experimenting with it as a first down call. Because how do we get them behind the sticks on second down?
Yeah. Well, there's some data that says first down is more important than third. Like if you look at some of these data points, like that's really what determines 3 and outs, not whether you're good on 3rd and 2 or not. It's okay, did you get them in a 2nd and 12 or 2nd and 9, or are they in 2nd and 4? But again, like nobody used to talk about the Narduzzi stuff, and now it's everywhere. It's like even like Flores is the greatest example of that. He totally learned from there and took the Vikings, and they look. He overhauled that in one night, but that is.
Well, and he can go to his general manager and go to his head coach and say, "Look, these are the kind of players we need to draft." We don't need that defensive lineman in the first round. We need guys that can run and hit. And the other one I look at is what the guy in Philadelphia did with that Braun dude. He was a outside linebacker. You bring him to Philadelphia, he can play here in this system. Big Fangio. It was what a great coaching job that was.
Oh,
just not just identifying talent, but identifying the skill set that can be applicable to a position. That was pretty remarkable.
Well, that kind of goes back to our Belichick conversation from earlier. Like with all the personnel groups they have, that's why they have all the personnel groups. Is like, what can this group of kids and athletes do? Like, these are our pass rushers. Well, so in this personnel group, they'll be on the field doing X, Y, Z. Like, I think one of the best things I've ever listened to was Edelman talk to Patricia on his podcast, and how in depth he went into like personnel and various other things. So that's again why I'm excited for like Ohio State spring ball. Selfishly, is so I can go watch defense and what he ends up doing. Because like again, watching Knowles for the past couple of years, you saw a lot of good, very interesting stuff, and now it's also very good and interesting, but it's a different kind of good and interesting.
I love Knowles stuff at Oklahoma State.
Oh yeah,
well, because they're kind of. I mean, you look at like the Big 12 offense. We're kind of like a Big 12 defense, at least with the personnel and I liked what he did with some undersized guys, long guys, but kind of a little light in the
Yeah.
tail. The other one to add is I read an article years ago in Sports Illustrated. Mike Pettin wrote an article about it was called Positionless Defense. And you hear that in like basketball, you hear it in lacrosse. I do think that we are kind of going that way. That maybe you're positionless. You're just are you one of the top 11, and we will adjust the position for you. And you also like the Cody Alexander mentality, the hybrid. Really we play with multiple hybrid players. It's not like you've got to be this to be this kind of deal.
No, you're 100% right. Like, so and I think that's always the conversation amongst high school coaches is what? How do we get our best 11 on the field? That's
Yeah, and
the
how do
conversation.
you make that guy? How do you make that guy applicable and get how do you get them on the field?
Yep.
That's your job as the coach, right? Look at the body styles. You can play here, and if not, I've got to get you in somewhere because we don't have the ability to cut you and go find somebody else. That's the brass tack.
This isn't private school, but that's
Nope.
a
Nope.
now the other thing I wanted to bring up to our listeners, I know you do, besides the zone pressure stuff, and we kind of just segued really easy in that one because we were already kind of talking. Is when we talked, you talked about putting your D lineman in 4-point stances,
Yeah.
and I don't think that used to be a very common thing. Like if you watch like the old Michigan slant angle videos from like what was it, like the 70s or 80s that you can
Right.
find online here and there and all that jazz. That's in there. But then like you don't see anything else about it. You occasionally hear a guy talk about it here and there, but not really. Like, I mean, so like, why do you guys play your D lineman in 4-point stances? Is it just the amount of movement you do so it doesn't give away anything? Is it like for our audience, like, why do you guys put your D
Well,
lineman?
I always thought, I coached defensive line for a very short time in my career. And, we taught a right-handed stance and a left-handed stance. And, I have problems demonstrating a left-handed stance because I never really had to play in one. But I mean, Navy ran it for a long time when we were first getting. I went to Naval Academy quite a bit as a young coach. I thought that their personnel and who they had to play, and our personnel who had to play, there were some similarities. Also, sitting down with the guys at CSU Pueblo years ago, they were big proponents of it when they were very good in 2018. But I just thought it makes the footwork the same left and right. If you've got you said it, we slant and angle, a lot, probably 85% of the time. So you're only good as what you coach. So therefore, we kind of, and once again, it's not an easy stance to get into, especially. But the guys that we play, if they can't play in that stance, they really can't play defensive line for us. So we get away with some lighter guys, some longer guys. Most of our defensive linemen, they came into our school saying I'm an outside linebacker. We said, okay, just wait over there and we'll figure out what we're going to do with you. And another one I heard was I was telling my son this of all people. I heard some guys speak at Colgate a couple, this was years before the pandemic, and they were the best defense in the country in all four divisions. And their big thing was the coach stopped the tape and said, look, of the 11 guys on the screen right there, none of them are playing a position they played in high school. So once again, we're going to do things a little bit different here. I think it calls them to bend. It calls you to be kind of balanced, but the footwork thing, and you're not talking about a right-handed and left-handed stance. And we also believe that being head up pre-snap, you've got a two-way go, which limits the amount of double teaming, and it's a lot of one-on-one stuff, which we feel like with movement, we have a chance to be successful up front.
Like I said, I've kind of researched it on and off just because like again when I was at Fairfield Christian we were slant angle 3-4 and then we've used some 3-4 slant angle stuff over the years and again that's usually for me been it doesn't give away anything like half the time and it's a little more balanced as you
Now we've got a couple players in the last 2 years. We have a defensive lineman that's 6'8.5". Basketball kid. He's 6'8.5". He's probably 215. So, but we've allowed him, kind of doing some we're doing some footwork stuff with defensive lineman now after the weight room. Like, Mick, we may let you play in a 3-point stance. I just don't think you can structurally play in a 4. But, that back foot better be splitting your front foot. We want to still have a balance. It's not, you're not in a sprinter stance. We want to try to stay as balanced as we can, because if you step with your right foot with your right hand down, it is going to be shorter than step with your left foot. So therefore, and we're a big believer, our rules are, first step's always to the call. We get away from Roger or Louie. The next step's at your key. So that initial step is pretty short. It's not quite a pick up and put down, but we don't want to cover a lot of ground because we're going to play a little bit farther off the ball than most.
Yeah, no, I get you. Like, and I think it's, and kind of you mentioned there, you have to adapt to your kids. Like a 6'8" kid, I don't care if you're on offense or defense, their body structure and movement's a little different than others. That's just a general fact of life you see in
And we're
college.
trying to really overemphasize the lockout and the fulcrum with those kids. Get locked out, control the blocker, and now we can play off of that. If you're playing, if you're slanting to a 5, if you're down keying to a 3, it's a little different. But if you're becoming the 5 technique, and once again, does that mean that maybe that kid's only going to play 5 technique? I don't know. We'll see as we go. And the one thing we're going to try to do a better job as a staff is, we rotate between 6 and 7 defensive linemen, but we usually don't rotate them inside the series. We rotate them in between series. And I've told our defensive line coach and our linebackers coach, we should try to experiment with, okay, we go 3 plays as first down, new D line in, get them in. Play these guys less plays in a row and see if it's going to help us out at all.
Okay.
Because I think with looking at our depth now, I don't see any of our defensive line being any better than another. It's more or less you've got, and I think with the 4-point stance thing, imagine it. We don't have to really coach a nose guard and a tackle anymore. We coach 3 defensive linemen.
Good. Now, one of the other questions, and I've started asking more coaches this, I do this a little bit every year, but I'm trying to be more focused on it this year, is like because every part of the country is different. Like what Texas sees and what Maryland sees are 2 different things. Same thing with California, Ohio. Like part of that's the coaching style, the colleges in your state, because again, usually you take after your state college to a point, or local colleges. Like you see it here, like with Ohio State all the time. Like when they're a big inside zone team, guess what? Teams try to run the next
Sure.
couple. It's the same concept. Um, and also it depends on the defenses, to be honest. Like if everybody's a 3 front defense, like you start seeing more of certain things versus others. Like it's just general fact of life. So kind of like with you guys being a multiple defense, that's primarily an odd, but your movement odd that gets very multiple. Like what offensive trends are you seeing in the area? Whether it be people you're playing, whether it's other people you get on film, like what trends are you kind of seeing? Because and the reason and part of the reason what sparked that question to me is this morning, I don't know who tweeted it out, but they like predicted like what you'll see in 2025 and 2026 was like a lot more drop 8 Tampa 2, which is just cover 3, which
Right.
and short passing game, like on offense.
The drop 8 stuff, for whatever reason, is becoming more and more popular. We're going to fiddle with it maybe a little bit from a type. I mean, I sat down with a couple coaches at the convention about it, but it always came back to what we're doing at slant angle, playing one high on the back end, and it always kind of comes back to that anyways. It's kind of a package kind of deal. But in terms of answering your question about offenses, we were interesting in Anne Arundel County, Maryland, is that we were, I think, 20 plus years ago, we were the only place where you saw 2x2, 3x1 detached almost every play. You didn't see a tight end. You didn't see, and you saw the ball get thrown. Now that everybody else is caught up with us, you're seeing now a retread on some wing T principles. More closed formations, more 2 and 3 motions, more unbalanced, which is going to cause us to have to be, we'll play one high as long as we can. And then if it becomes we need an extra body, we have to become more of a quarters team, which we play some quarters, not much. And like we talked about with the odd front, you're kind of dictated in having to be more of a weak pressure team. It's really hard to kind of, I hate the word, use the word bastardize the coverage, so you can bring the be more of a field slant or a strong slanting team. There's just too much. That's too much defense. So I don't like to be stuck in that. We want to have that appearance where we can go, left or right every period, and a good offensive play caller is going to figure out pretty quick where the reduction's coming from, and here comes counter one way or something the other way, and now we're exposed. But and also having two safeties who are box defenders and can also play two vertical. I don't know if we have that in our personnel, to be perfectly honest. But I've been in one place where we did, and then we ran a lot of the Narduzzi stuff we've run before, the press cover, the press quarter stuff. It's awesome. It's great. But I think you have to have the dudes to do it.
Yeah. Now, I got two questions left for you. One is about a mutual friend of ours, just because, and you probably know where we're going with that already. But so Rich Holzer's a longtime guest on here and has been on here several times and is a good friend of yours. You guys actually coached together at one point.
We did.
So I love doing this when I have guests that know each other. And do you have any good Rich Holzer stories or any good moments, since he's a heavy offensive, we're going to throw the ball everywhere, and you're the defensive guru? Kind of any good battles or any good stories?
Well, I will tell you, I mean, we coached 1 year together. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And we were fortunate enough at a point where we had enough kids where we were a one platoon team, or two, I guess two platoon. We had kids on only offense, kids only on defense. And I had come in as a new defensive coordinator, and we're a big run the bags, run pursuit. We're going to run at the beginning of practice for a lot of reasons. And we're running the bags, and they're over there doing their pat and go, and there's really kind of opposite practice. They're hanging out, and one of our outside linebackers goes, "Coach, why are we going to run these bags every day?" I said, "Wait till team, and you'll find out." Because our team periods were probably one of the most fun experience I've ever had as a coach, because it was as close to a college as you could possibly imagine. Most of our opponents weren't as good as our team periods Monday through Thursday. That was a lot of fun. Now there was one period that Rich is a big screen guy, and that's an extension of really of his running game. And it wasn't called team screen; it was called team scream, because Holzer would lose his mind every day about linemen blocking downfield, and so it'd be funny. We'd be over the lab. He goes, "You hear that? Oh, that sounds like team scream." And also, last thing I would tell our guys on defense, I said, "Look, fellas, we go to team. I want to hear Holzer lose his mind at least once. That's our job." So those were fun times. And it was good. Yeah, I know it made me better as a coach.
Good. And then last question, I've asked, especially the past couple I've filmed, but because this is always a pet peeve of mine. What does your team's pregame look like? Because I don't think anybody's ever happy with it, and the ones that are, you ask them about a year later, and they're no longer happy with it. So what is your
Are we
pregame for
talking
your coach?
pregame once the bell rings, or pregame like?
Once you get to the wherever you're getting to, say it's home, say it's a home game. Like, I'll just make it that simple. You have a home game this week. What time are your kids there? And then from the time the kids there to kick off, what are you guys doing?
Okay, so we kick off in our county at 6:30, which is a little bit weird. It's very early. We got to score 3:18. So home games, I think, are a lot easier because it's less rushed. So we do a pre-game snack. We don't. I was at the Naval Academy. I go to several spring practices. It's only 5 minutes away. But they're one of the teams where they have like a mid-practice snack, and they're handing these guys out like fruit snacks from freaking Walmart or Sam's Club, granola bars. And I started thinking, why are we trying to do this big like team function before a game? Let's just do a snack. If they're doing this, then why aren't we doing it? So I talked to our parents. Said, look, let's just keep it very simple. Let's do like something. I mean, we obviously want to have low sodium. We're still trying to carb up, so we do like fruit snacks. The kids love Uncrustables. Love them. Love them. I buy 2 boxes for my own son and pack 2 in his lunch every day, and he's 15 years old. So do that kind of stuff. So as soon as the bell rings, our kids normally report right to the cafeteria, and I will usually go to the coach's office, drop my stuff off. I won't change yet, but I'll go into the cafeteria. Our team moms and our assistant coaches are there, and I'll usually say, "Look, I'll already have the schedule written on the board in the locker room. Like, here are the times all the way up to kickoff from backwards and forwards." I said, "Look, okay, it's 3:22. We're going to walk through at 3:45. So what we'll do, we'll have a walk through outside in lower. So they'll eat, they'll dress, we'll walk through, and we usually will have a special teams check as always. I'll have a defensive script we will go through. We'll have formation check, then we'll go maybe 4 or 5 plays, 4 or 5 calls, the things we expect them to come out in the first 2 series. and then our offensive play caller will go through, if he scripted out his plays or not, and then we'll, have a quick kind of circle up. We'll talk about the game very quickly, and they're kind of on their own personal reconnaissance until we walk out. So we don't warm up for very long. I think that's something that has changed in football. We only warm up for about 42 minutes, give or take. We don't want to be out there very long. It's almost like your golf game. Don't practice too much. Don't waste all those good shots. Get out there and play. Now, from our defensive warm up, we don't do a defensive team period. We do a tackle circuit, and that's it. We get warmed up. And then we might do 1 or 2 reps of pursuit. That's all we're doing.
Yeah.
Offensively, I let our offensive guys get as much as they need. They need to throw the ball. We usually do like a pat and go. Our linemen do their individual stuff. Offensive team get lined up and we play. So we kind of keep it, but our tackle circuit is to the ground, which is kind of weird, I know. But I want to get those guys ready for contact. And it's kind of like the old Chip Kelly thing. Are you ramping up? Or we look at that throughout the course of the week. I've talked to our offensive play caller, and so I said maybe we should make Monday and Tuesday really easy and really ramp up on Wednesday and Thursday. We're already doing it anyways, but we're trying to save these kids a little bit. But I don't think it makes sense to go hard Monday, Tuesday, and then go easy Wednesday, Thursday. That makes sense to me. You might as well ramp up for the game.
Yeah.
So we look at the warm up as the same thing. We're going to ramp up to the game. We're going to be physical in warm up. We're not going to play around and look at our gloves and all that stuff. We're gonna get after it. And when we go team on offense, it's 11 on 11, and I watch teams go on air. I'm like, I don't know if you guys are ready to play.
I love to watch teams that still static stretch because that makes me feel really good. Like that we're just gonna not move and stretch and just be really slow and just lean into stuff and like while
We do a dynamic, and then we do a couple static as more or less just a let's get ready to go kind of thing. It's not any.
I
And
can
I'm getting rid of most of that too. You always look at everything you do.
I'm talking those old school that are still doing the 1995 full static stretch where you're like
cherry pickers.
Yeah, on the ground for 15 minutes, and then you're holding your teammate's leg, and you're not really actually stretching them, and like those are the ones I'm like, all right, we're good for night. Like we'll probably outrun these.
Like our weight room warm up is just like whistle, 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 and it's all movement stuff. Now we do some like static like prisoner squats or we call it a seal jack where your hands go and you're spreading your chest. We do that stuff, but most of our warm up is all like it's just whistle, 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 whistle. And I don't even know if you care how the quality of it. It's just you're getting loose, right?
Perfect, coach. Now, coaches, 1, check our sponsor, Coachpad. 2, like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. 3, give Coach a follow on Twitter if you got any more detailed questions for him. He will gladly talk to you. Like I said, me and Coach, I don't think we spent 2 hours on a Zoom that night.
2 hours, yeah. Talking about that difference between kind of zone eyes and man eyes, and whenever I do a clinic talk, mostly we end up in the coverage deal because the one high stuff. Let's just run 4 verticals, and that's going to beat it. Which we've had good success against 4 verticals, but the idea of either seaming a vertical or a match carry delivery, and I usually get like what does that mean? Well, it's different versions of playing cover 3, but are you getting closer to the cover 1 without really crossing the line, or are you going to be more of the eyes defense? But we don't play hash numbers. We still play off of number 2. We still play off of number 3. That kind of stuff. So that's usually the long, fun discussions.
Well, coaches, if you want to ask him more about that, that's a great segue. Follow him on Twitter, shoot him a DM, Adam, whatever, all that lovely stuff. So you can talk to Coach in more detail. Otherwise, that's been our episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.